Hi everyone, welcome to today's lesson. This is now the fifth lesson I think in this series covering a master copy. So you remember in the previous lesson we were working on the sky in this Odeon Redon copy that I'm doing, but we left the ground, the landscape. So today I'm just going to go through kind of the first stage of this blocking in this kind of earthier section. Well, it's actually a mixture of water and rocks. So if I get my painting there, this is the reference I'm working from. So I've scrolled it down. If I scroll back up, you can see the sky, which is what we did last week. But this week we're going to be blocking in these kind of deep blues, blacks, some of the shapes for the kind of background hills as well. There's sort of a mixture of different sorts of rockiness going on in this piece. I'm leaving as we spoke about previously, I'm leaving the butterflies out for the time being. They're going to be painted over because I think that was the way it was originally painted. And 2 lessons ago, or 2 sessions ago, I blocked in the rough shapes in this landscape. So as we've spoken about a lot throughout the process of this exercise, what I'm going for is not necessarily, particularly in this case, an exact replica of the shapes in the painting. As you could see, it's a pretty loosely painted artwork. It's very expressive, so what I'm going for more is the expressiveness of the piece, the general feel of it, rather than specific shape of a rock or how wide the water is in the painting or something like that. I want to evoke the feel of the painting, not exactly copy it, and that's what, as I keep reiterating, that's the point of a landscape painting. We're looking for figuring out the mindset that the artist was in when they made that artwork. So I'm reasonably happy with the colours from last week. I'm going to be looking at some transitions. It's sort of crisp along here where the mountainside is kind of lighter, or kind of hillside rocks are lighter, and there are these kind of swirly, almost Van Gogh-like flowers that kind of mass over the lower section of rock. But it's softer through here, so I'm going to be looking for a kind of washy transition with some kind of purples and blues, and then start blocking in, kind of just like splodging in, I think, sections of blue for the water. And it's quite a deep blue, but there are some corrections in the original, so I'm not too fussed about being super accurate, as I say. Once again, like last week, I've got some kind of older, more worn out. See if I can get it to focus. No. Ooh. There we go. So I've got a couple of more worn out brushes because the original painting is quite rough. Some bristles as well, so they're quite stiff. But I've also got a newer bristle as well, just in case I need it. A kind of slightly bigger, newer bristle, which is more flexible. And might be useful for some of the kind of washier sections, smoother, washier sections of this landscape. I probably won't get any more detailed than this because I'm just blocking stuff in for the time being. In terms of colours, I will probably go for the high chroma of a Prussian blue, but I think I'll also need a little bit of ultramarine, which I'll just dot over the top there. There's quite a lot of blue in the watery section. We also want some OCAD yellow, because we're going to need some greens, kind of greeny hues, dark greens. Definitely want black. I've already got a bit of black on my palette. Let's swivel up actually while I'm doing this. So that's my palette. I'm just building up at the moment. Probably got enough white. There's not a great deal of white in this lower section, so I can dig into what I have. I want a little bit more yellow ochre because there are some colours that I think are probably yellow ochre out of the tube. If you can spot anything out of the tube, it's useful. I'm going to put, for the first time, some alizarin crimson, which I might use for some of the richer, deeper blacks. And if there are any purples necessary, the alizarin crimson is kind of like a purpley red naturally. A little bit more CAD red. So I've pretty much got my full palette out today. And there's a lot of different colours, so I want to make sure I'm reasonably well prepared for them. And finally I'm going to put some burnt umber, which was the base colour, but it might prove useful, I think. So I'll just swivel this back to a painting. So let's get started. I'm going to work initially with these kind of inky blues, I think, which sort of tumble kind of through here, and then they get a bit lighter as they go below this rock, but they kind of wrap around down there. And I'm just using mineral spirits as my mixer. Or my thinner. Just realised I've probably not got the camera on the best side. Just going to swap it around quickly. Hopefully that's good. Might get a little bit of reflection. Make it slightly straighter. Yeah, something like that. So yeah, I'm going to start with these deeper blues. So working a little bit within that principle we often apply of working with our darkest values first. There's a little bit of a kind of soft edge to this blue, kind of like it's a fairy clump of grass or something like that. So I'm going to try to keep that. It actually, this brush, it's all a bit worn and splayed, but that actually can make for quite a nice texture. Certainly quite grass-like texture. You'll find for landscapes it can be useful to have some slightly more unusually shaped brushes. There's also similar blues kind of going on up here. Just going to start to kind of block them in. They're kind of swirly, these ones, so I'm just thinking about the sorts of shapes made by Redon. They're also a little bit more evidently blue. Now, because I'm painting blue over a red, they're coming up as quite kind of black, sort of neutralizing each other, these colours. I'm just going to add a little bit, there we go, a little bit of white. I'm going to start trying to feel out for those blues that exist down there. I'm going to stick with blue for the time being. Some down here as well actually, some lighter blues kind of mingling in. I'm just kind of touching up the edge of this as well. So I find in this clump the blues are a little bit darker and more true blue down lower, and then as they kind of rise up, they get greener. I'm going to start mixing some greens in with my colours. And slightly lightening as well. They're quite scribbly, but I think they're kind of scribbled in and then worked over subsequently. Those kind of more circular colours. So now I'm going to swap to my slightly larger brush and mix a bit of a lighter blue, kind of purer blue. Start applying that down below. So I'm going to try to figure out some brush strokes that kind of capture that sort of dabbiness that he has down here. Possibly that's slightly too high chroma, so it's too intense. Let me see. That's not too bad. I'm just kind of building up these textures. There's a bit of the original ground shows through in Redon's piece, so as much as possible I'm trying to keep that apparent so it feels similar. Just using the side of my brush, which creates a slightly shorter or thinner stroke. It's almost sort of fauve, a bit like the Fauvus, this manner of application. And he's an interesting artist, Redon, because he precedes a lot of these movements, but he influenced them a lot. Unfortunately, isn't particularly well known nowadays, which is a shame, because he was a really important precursor to most modern movements that people love and know. You can see a few of his pieces around the UK and then more in Belgium and France, where the symbolists were more active. So there's kind of like a subtle suggestion of a reflection in the water, which means that the water gets slightly lighter and bluer up higher, like up around this area, then it kind of roughly scribbles in. Through here it's a little bit lighter again. There are going to be some glazes over that. So that section of the water is quite light. Then as we get further to the right, there's kind of like almost like there's a reflection of the rocks above, which means it gets darker again. just doing the same thing, these sort of dabby strokes, but working into a kind of deeper, darker blue. So over here it's quite dark as well. There's a little bit of kind of variety. I think it's just sort of scrubbed over, looking at it. Similar sorts of textures though. Slightly lighter again, just here. For some reason, there's a little bit of a kind of another one there actually. A few internal reflections sort of things. And a colour there. And then just looking at it now, there's a kind of like darker shape. Cascades down here a little bit. Yeah, I'm reasonably happy with that for my blues, purpley blue type things. Well, actually I'll go a bit more purple, so like for instance here feels more purple, so what I'm doing is mixing a bit of alizarin crimson to make for a kind of more purpley colour as it works its way up a bit here as well, but I'm going to go a bit lighter around this area, I think. Some kind of like lighter purples mixing their way up here, kind of scrubbing over the top as well. So as I say, I want to start thinking about how these colours of the water work their way into the landscape above. I don't want them to be completely distinct because they're not. Kind of scrub over a little bit here. There's a sense of these colours being sort of washed over. Yeah, I quite like that transition, so I'm reasonably happy with that. Could maybe do it a little bit more. Slightly more kind of those orangey hues making their way across. Dipping back into these blues. So you'll see I'm shifting a lot with colours around this stage of the piece. So I'm just sort of feeling it out. I want to try to establish them. But I am aware of the fact that he definitely didn't overwork the piece, so I'm not going to have loads of opportunities to change things beyond this point. A little bit of a almost like the painting was scratched back. So I'm just doing that a little bit on that side. Just give it that wed quality. But yeah, that's not too bad. I'm pretty happy with how that's looking it's working as far as the glues go. Just don't want to overdo it. There are some like little rocks and that sort of thing around here. I'm just going to leave them for now. Work more on the lighter sections of these rocks, which is quite a different set of colours. So I'm going to give my brushes a bit of a clean. I'm going to try to mix something kind of like a lighter yellowy, reddy orange colour. Just sort of drag it over here. Possibly a little bit like that. I mean, it might not be too bad. It might actually, I think I said, but it might just be pure yellow ochre that's there. Yeah, that's not too bad. So we can start using this to define this rock. Possibly gone maybe a little bit bright with it. I could tone it down with a little bit of burnt umber. Yeah, something like that's quite nice. So it's kind of patched in, it's rocky. Thinking again about the textures that we're making with our brush strokes. That's what I'm primarily concerned with this piece. So I'm just defining these rock shapes. They're sort of separated by these lines that he's sketched in. Try and make sure I've got enough room for everything. Being a bit more specific than I was the first time round. So this is kind of purpley, a bit too bright, so I want the right value, slightly darker purpley colour that sits in the centre of this rock. Not too bad, maybe not quite purple enough, might be something I correct later. Still trying to avoid too much precision with this, just kind of scrubbing over. Probably go back and shore things up once I'm happy with the overall effect. Just want to get the right colours, the right feel for the colours as they're dotted around this section. I'm reasonably happy with that. I think could maybe do with a bit more Elizabeth crimson because I want to just kind of boost the purpliness of that central purple. Yeah, it's not bad actually, that purple. So it plays off those yellows. Partly the yellow's quite high chroma. It's highly saturated, so it was just, otherwise these purples were looking a bit grey and I didn't want them to look grey. So yeah, I'm quite happy with how that's blocked in. There are now these kind of deeper reds, even deeper than what we've got blocked in as the original colour. Not very far off, but we need to go a bit more intensely kind of orangey red down there. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. So I'm not entirely happy with these, maybe the shapes or the texture perhaps, but I think that'll take a little bit of extra working over the top for these kind of riffs in the rock. They need to be sort of delineated, but they might work a bit better overlaid afterwards. Otherwise I think they might blend in a little bit too much, so might put a few suggestions of them in just to create a little bit more structure than there is. For the most part, these might be things that I kind of go back and reassess possibly next time before we do the butterflies, but could do the butterflies first and come back to all this sort of stuff. Then we'll have everything established, so that might be the way that we go. Yeah, I'm not too unhappy with that, so I'll probably leave that as is. We'll be reworking it a bit later, some of those edges, maybe doing some washes. It's sort of scratched over the top. I don't know if it would benefit from a little bit of that treatment as well. Yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah, so it's not too bad. And finally, just going to mix up some kind of pale yellows, because there are these tiny kind of flecks of rock all the way through this section, which are almost kind of pure white. They're not quite. they kind of play off the purples, and they're just sort of dotted all around that section. I'm not going to go fully into them because I think they're quite complexly layered, so I just want to create some suggestion for them, and we'll go back and kind of fill in the gaps and work over a little bit just to create the right effects in terms of the way these kind of cooler, these sort of cool cyans that sit within the white. Everything's quite wet at the moment, so if you overmix at this point, you'll kind of risk stuff becoming blendings rather than scumbles or glazes, which we'll go into next week. But yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that just for this stage. So I can let that dry and keep working over the top of it. Just going to pop my camera off and have a slightly better look. So there you go, you can see, step back the whole piece now. I'm just going to zoom out of my reference. So that's how my whole painting is roughly looking at the moment. And then there it is in the original. So I'm fairly happy with how that's coming along. I mean, there's slight shape differences, but as I say, in this particular piece it's not too crucial. Next week we'll probably block in the butterflies, which will kind of finish out the whole piece, kind of get a feel for the whole painting, and from there we'll be able to figure out what we want to do next, how we want to change things, or how we want to glaze and scumble and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's it for today. Hopefully it was interesting, and I think it's the last lesson of this, well, up to midterm. So it'll be a bit of a break and then we'll be back in about 2 weeks' time, I think. So yeah, hopefully that was good, and I look forward to seeing your work. If you're part of OCAD Studio, you can send it through. If not, you can follow the links to sign up. You can get tutoring from myself and other specialist tutors at the school. Yeah, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.